sauce. Ini ta terrain tene lariang ta tomer kachungu sama tope konla ta terrain de tragic tola. Ini sam nangke ini ta nyamjo nangke chamala tomer ini dash 나서 샬롭 체벌했니 쟁마로 그다시 데레이나 안다 고ndo 고모 트라히 데레이나 안다 다 참마다더니 트라히 데레스 예니쇼고 yes.
So first, before we get started with the actual teachings this evening, I want to greet everyone who's joining us here and come to listen to the teachings and say to everyone, good morning or good evening, wherever you might be in the world, and tashi dele to everyone.
다 terrain aranze miserk any tanga toyang chundre shya de karayense na any or to can Thangtong Gyalpo ze yawe any tuje jembo yerenze gi gomde rodan kachema singende any
And so tonight, the Dharma connection that we're going to be making, the teaching that I'm going to be giving tonight, is on a practice of Avalokitesvara, which was written by the great Mahasiddha Thangtong Gyalpo. And it's called Far-Reaching Benefit of Beings Extensive as the Sky, Visualization and Mantra Recitation of the Great Compassionate One.
다 당고 있는 거란지 주편 탕통 잡고 생인데 스트레스 얘네 칸레스 되게 되네 로즈 얘는 돌듯이 쉬고요 대 탕통 잡고 끝에 다당하게 된다나 야돼요 되네 데레샤스.
And so first, I want to start by, talking about who is this Thangtong Gyalpo and what kind of person was he? So I want to give you a little bit of history about him. And so Thangtong Gyalpo, you see a statue, the bigger statue in front of Rinpoche's computer there with the white hair and beard. That's Thangtong Gyalpo.
얘네 공개 chen 연달아 야점바 세고요래. 얘네 야점바 생인데 되네 공개 Thangtong then 주현던데 then 망보지 쪽게 변하다 나란즈마 저 텐데스케지네 되네 차리 자체모 나는데 되게 채나 코 센터에 야점바스네 되네 토버레스.
And so another one of his names is Chaksamba. Chaksamba means the iron bridge man or the iron bridge person. And so it's because he did so much extensive work creating a lot of iron bridges and crossways that he attained this name, Chaksamba.
ini ta ini ngaranzu yang khongge ta ngaranzu nangbik 미ser기직 다양 지럽게 나는 시험도 다 공양 되네 제 학과 지ren자이다 아니 대나게 양 지ren자이 초고 나바 영 받네 담링다 되네 거를 뭐지 다 대탐지 직소 아니 이 시라마소 아니 깨도 되요 봐.
And if we look into the particular stories of the past lives and of the history and past lives of Thangtong Gyalpo, then it's said that he is the combined timeless awareness of Guru Rinpoche and Avalokitesvara and the wrathful form of Avalokitesvara, Hayagriva.
다티 가르사 월드나다 단다 도도 지나다 강들의 지ren색 되니 트루코지 yense 다티 쇼요레스.
And so in a more brief way, what that means is that he's an incarnation of or a manifestation of Avalokitesvara.
다양 디니 미서바텐데 에니 지렌스 생인데 수인 대양지 에니 미히케텐데 요나 다 지렌스데 기타는 가란조 칸르세나 닝기게라세 다 코랑금 세용란라고 닝기 왕촉세 다 간드라 상제 담지기 소리 닝기에 담지 수제도 두야반라고 다 용락 코랑 닝기게라세 요레스.
And so if that's unclear, if there are any of us joining us this evening who don't know who Avalokitesvara is the divinity or the divine form of compassion. So he often gets the name, the Lord of Compassion. And so he's the combined essence of compassion of all the Buddhas takes this form as Avalokitesvara.
다 코로나랑 그 로진라고 저기 돈이 휴득값서 되니 다 산지 오바메게 돈이 되니 코로나니 심지어 담지 그 던져봐 길랑 너나 되니 다 장첩스바 되니 장첩스바 스바 쳔보 너나 되니 심지어 탐체라 Any better just Toksewa Chembo Goni. Benetang around the Bay Mindrawochinata, Pugudrawachina, Amazach, I mean Puguza Chembochita, Navandra, Amadelji, Tedro Savagiona, and Amati Nima own the Koran Benches of Pugut song in the Karichik of Pedagora. Then I get any Simtia Tamjela, any better to two tado. Make Mazomba, that Kenny zigzing it another terrace, bed, and it goes to make Mazomba. Two dog, and it better just go to Tama, tedding in the Segayores.
And so then a little history is that Avalokitesvara was originally made a commitment before Buddha Amitabha to work for the benefit of all sentient beings. And so from that time on, he was known as a great bodhisattva. And so he has this great love for all living beings, just like a mother to her only child. So like a mother who has a child, and if that child is sick or in pain, then the mother will constantly be focusing on the welfare of that child, even. And so just like that, Avalokitesvara feels that way towards all sentient beings and is always looking upon them and with love and concern. They say that Avalokitesvara's eyes are never closed, that he is always and continually looking upon sentient beings.
Yenje deva te kona la teni tapet kesere chi ene bezanche ne te kona ni dubya che damje yabaresa wa perna teni rani teni pet kesere 상양 마지바 che ne wa tapet kesere ene 장초 숨바 세도 tapet kesere nga so ya koran ene 다 장초 숨베 살아 요네 Simjian Tamji, Zosonomado, then Consimpian to Le Tangjiani, La Sanjin and Nogoman, Singa, Simpian Conal, Rova Jagin, Simpian de Tan Jagins, that Dodo, then a Korangeta, Tamja de, those Jajin, then it happened to get any Tamja Jajabachires.
And so Avalokitesvara is one who gave up any sense of self-interest, of any wish for his own comfort or happiness, and was entirely and solely working towards the benefit of other beings, the comfort, happiness, and benefit for other beings. And he made a commitment to do so. He made this commitment that he even wouldn't attain Buddhahood, that he would remain on the Bodhisattva levels until all sentient beings had attained Buddhahood, that he would not attain Buddhahood until all of them had. And so that's the kind of great being, the kind of great commitment that Avalokitesvara has.
알아서 다 담자 대라고 지내더니 잡아 대라고 지금 삼용은 다 대라 탑 해봐지야 거란마도 이니 답변은 미 찍라고 샤와 찍라고 지 심지어 담제를 뱀바당 되어 두고 말아 이제 송가 탑 해베가 토니 아니 탑나 소베가 토니 답변은 지서 찍대가 토니 아니 찍대가 토니 칸에서 배 토고 찍대비 소리지 칸에서 배 토고 직대는 내비 처리지 간지 팬 도고도 니가블 팬 간지 도고도 다 대답했더니 답변에서 타도고 팬의 간지 도고도 놀라다 애니 심지어 탐직 직가도 드리스 제제는더니 팬바도 내가 코나라 삼노당 대다고 지기다 샤워 드롭딩이지 차대고 요래 드리지 레비오레스.
And it was with very skillful methods that Avalokitesvara was able to do this. You know, without such skillful methods, he wouldn't be able to help more than, you know, a couple people or a couple activities or something like that. But it's through having these skillful methods and a multitude of methods that Avalokitesvara knows. How can he help in terms of worldly types of help? And in what ways can he help in terms of worldly kind of help or benefit? Also, how can he help in a supramundane or a spiritual level? Like, how can he help? And both in terms of how can he help in terms of someone's immediate needs? How can he help in terms of their ultimate needs? And so, you know, Avalokitesvara is one who not only has those skillful methods and many methods to help beings in whatever way is necessary, but also is one who had that commitment and had the intention of only helping others.
다 장교 숨바 생인데 속에 찍 로와 소속의 찍다 나랑 저 속다 템바 삼바도 껴바다 템바 되네 대탐지라 찍가서 팬다고 다 되게 되네 망고지 송고요래 빼나다 되면은 되는 나랑 저 아니 인지 메니 tellatene number may solravo laye solravo ota tuskeki ene chipote mares penata sor na sope pena ene tendre tache durza tanse patende ota che ene loju mambuchi yo debres.
And so in that manner then since there are so many different kinds of beings, and you know, then there have to be so many different ways to work with them. And so then these bodhisattvas, they can appear in forms which are suitable for all beings of different realms. And so they can appear in forms that are suitable for those different realms. They can appear and manifest to work with or accord with the attitudes and the conduct of beings in those realms. And so it's not the case that these Buddhas or Bodhisattvas absolutely have to appear as humans or as these kind of deities, but they can appear in various kind of forms in whatever manner is necessary to help these different beings. And so there are many stories of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas appearing in all kinds of different forms.
당봉아란 쪽에 사자 똥과 딘리게다 직 잠소 잠소돼서 고소 마다 강르돼서 쉬어 잠소다 힘나돼서 지르 당보 되는 지ren데 에니치 피우크 딘리라 다직 나란 쪽에 아니 딘리스카르서 아니 피우당 아니 딘리게 다직 소리지니 main roper logi yobres then priu tang tram seta 인내기 답변은 처치. 아니 미긴 로아트소야 두스긴 permit 로지요레스.
And so, like, if we think about Tibet in particular, there was at some point, there are so many stories of Chenrezig, of Avalokitesvara in Tibet. And so, like, for example, there was a time when Tibet was just an empty place, an empty space, and that there was a great lake and these snowy mountains, and there's a story that Avalokitesvara manifested as a monkey and was kind of the progenitor of humans in Tibet.
다 티니 피고당 자기는 되는 트바 피고당 기존 로마게더니 트바 다양 트라모스는데도 왔다 트라모스는다 양 데리스 피고나마른 거jen데도 다 된라고게 소르드더니 다 코란조 당보 디사게 사자돼서 트라폭돼서 다 티니 당보 다 지도와 렉톡지하더니 보고 톡지 다 티니 테네 rumba yen도 테니 제뭐 동 톡세네더니 메기 르바다 주바다 테니 카와카와라 친 간데 제바 인생한다 테니 코조페네 신가다바 사예메바 테라 소페게 로주 텐데 테니 다치 야쳔보 요래라 다다양 산이데서 늘 종교 요래 다다 나라양 로미오.
And so it said that Avalokitesvara manifested as this monkey, and Jetendroma manifested as a tramo. Tramo is like another kind of, I don't know, monkey. Sometimes people translate it as a demoness, but anyway, it's like a monkey with a longer tail, a different type of animal. Anyway, they say that those were the ancestors of the Tibetan people, and that they originally like gave birth to the six beings who were like the founders then of like the 6 lineages of Tibetan people. And then those 6 who are like these, further emanations, then they started, plowing the fields and planting the crops and kind of, really establishing the land of Tibet and the people of Tibet. And so there are many such amazing stories, and they're not just amazing stories. There's places, the actual places that, are identified in the histories. And I've been to these places.
야, 티니 아란 저거 미엔로 와트 소마 차우니다 티니 아란 저거 직에니 다 rumba긴도 지야 미기 남발라 차츠도 갑소야 에니 지가레서 거고 티니게 에니 티니 다 rumba긴도 지가 저 가레서 거고 사긴다 때속을 내가 제바당 티니 아란 저 배차야나 티니 야 미서기 Gyalpo Tong, Sumodang, Lombola Sopatabu Yang, Rigi Nambaki Tony Yang, Jing Zebatini Pet and Yores.
And so then the eventually this progeny of these monkeys eventually became humans, or gradually evolved into humans and started farming and so forth. And so then and then eventually some of those were also like these further emanations, like emanating as kings and queens and ministers who further, enacted the enlightened activities.
Hola, soy any tena yingi ching around any young tinning around the ya tambik shoot in the taya yinitini tayak. Any tendrig in the barra you have a capsutini, yini tayang around the penata, any Guru Rinpoche Tao, any Lamata. Tini young tela sopa tabutini ching around the any young gagandang. And
then there's further stories after as time progressed, and it was actually time that it was going to be able for the Dharma, the holy Dharma, to spread in Tibet, and then further emanations of Avalokitesvara, like Guru Rinpoche appearing as the Lama and other teachers and spiritual masters and so forth appeared and continued this activity in Tibet. And there are many stories like that.
어야 다양 아니 참참나 직나라는 가르사고 아니 양 아니 드레이 남반다고 페르나타 스토미 남반다고 드레스 제제는 되네 양 직나라는 지 아니 너나 지 코서 탑시나 속게 되네 탑시 트라민데게 토니 아니 된데게 다제 단다 두명 남만다고티 다지 가르사 yana pemba tang deva tang tene ta ngaran zu chi droba tene skia ge tene roba che yak che o ta tene ge namba tene mang po chi yore la ngus tene te ta be loji tene chong yores.
And so then also sometimes, they would, Avalokitesvara would appear even as like some kind of wrathful deity or wrathful spirit. And so even though they take that form, this is just another one of these multitude of methods for the ultimate purpose that Avalokitesvara is serving, which is, to work for the benefit of all beings in order to establish them in happiness, in order to help them. And so there are, many such stories. There's so many forms that Avalokitesvara and other deities have taken. And we also have, real histories, real historical accounts of these events.
Hola, ta nani loju chi nguyo ge toni pe yang chi ya chen chenpo chen. Ta nga to Thangtong Gyalpo sangen di. Ta jiren ze ge yang chi ta turba. Jiren ze ge ta chi chen zhong gen yin se na yang. Ta ngani chang ni ge ta chi kar se go ko. Ta ngo no ma go ba. Halam ta pe de chi ze ko jiren ze ge. Ta pe ngo su pe na de zhawo che ju men hen. Tipe tenrege ta yatsen chimbuk loju ta zeji ta tenre yode jures.
And so then amongst those amazing stories, one real certain amazing story is the story of Tangtong Gyalpo himself, who is an emanation of Avalokitesvara. And his, the amount of enlightened activities that he was able to accomplish, for him to be able to do that, really, unless he were Avalokitesvara himself, it's like it would not have been possible for him to accomplish all of the activities that he did. And so this is another really incredible thing.
Ene ten yenge teni yendala yenge netik toya nuba ton toya musu gujekta pen totwe ji go yormas.
And so even with this compassion, one has to have the skillful means that are going to really accomplish the benefit of others, that are going to be able to guide and lead others, that are going to be able to bring about the potential that exists within others, really to be able to help them.
Voilà, so tenir son dans da tambo Thangtong Gyalpo ki tenir loju trawo je tordu ji shyoba yena tenir koran ki tang ki ta ya pyo ki ta uzang ki noni ta paza zang ki chola tenir memang juma tenir je ki nando ko chungba res.
And so just to give a brief story or history of Thangtong Gyalpo himself, he was born in central Tibet in the region called Tsang. And within that, he was born into a very common family.
알아서 다 텐데 쟁니장 다 미드는 알아서 다 신바단 루파 주만라고 텐데게 되는 나나 직더니 다 빼나 신가조야 당 semjen 송교 스카르세 semjen 종야 당 텐데라 속막 되니 통말게가 텐데랑 되니 제요레스.
And so he was born into a very common family, a family of farmers and herdsmen who he spent spent his childhood. He was raised into this family who were just maintaining farms and taking care of animals.
텐데게 돌아 코로나 랑긴 렌지가 코는 코로나 배 지금 와서 민게 전부여 돼 봐. 근데 미세기다 코로나 지 아니 다 자와다 마소는 가래 이나야 직다 배에서 두미하게 민도 전부여 해. ene tela yang chik yan tam mandra ba Then you Sarto Jack Nibachi or Pena Sarto Jack, Loda, Riquada. Tendela tape, have I your deba. The thing was to open the race.
And so then he was, really naturally compassionate, really inherently and naturally compassionate. And particularly, one particular quality he had was that he had great courage at whatever kind of task he would put himself to. He had this confidence and courage that he could do it. And another particular thing that he had that really distinguished him from others was his inventiveness. He was really able to, he had this sharpness and this intelligence to be really creative and inventive. And this is, very firmly established in history, like these accounts of him.
Pache Koran Tuma get so then Rabjon to partner on Redwa. Then there's on the Pache Chikon Sumja, the ne took your chick the water, Halam, the nature the Rabjon to partner on the so they are paid the school Namores.
Namos.
It's so Namo. Rabjon to partner.
No, you don't do Jarala.
Ore Chikon Sumja took your chick.
So he was born, quite a while ago, quite a long time ago, in 1361. Listen.
Sota, Tig Kapso, Tenipachisata, any Pavata, Tig Kapsota, Pola, Pension, that parts on Ronald and Rivachia to Soyape, Halibacala Capushore. That Tig Kapdola, Halam, Tangazo. Lungbaja Mindala parts of Pebble, this Lobjung and there, Halam, Tenny, Khandro with the bed, and a compound of your study, some of those, then Koran take out of Casa Kala Payores, Yagala so Payore, the Ninga so Cosa, any Janala Ma Payore, and then Nagin Koto such a Mongola again, Lobjung Janet, the Nishan and the Mango Jela Koto Tayada, and the Chayores.
And at that time, it was quite difficult, for Tibet, making any kind of connections with outsiders or outside countries and so forth. And there was very few people like Thangtong Gyalpo that, Thangtong Gyalpo, there's a lot of stories of him traveling all over the place. He traveled in, unlike, it was very rare for people at that time to do this. And he traveled, to India, to China, and, studied with a great many masters.
And that take up certain pay, check up among Chikiranga, Chigangas, Chikan and Raw, Chishu the Karachawars and a touch any Janamja Kalakapon, Rolam, the Sokalakapot, and the pay, then a Kalakan, Koran Rangaya, then the Tedravo Pentam, any Chodatas on the Drayalatini, Kalatini Chong, Spenata, Topata Sokatini, Tralatejume. Then it take taller type pages at a Tango Maji, then in Yetara, the region. Then a Koranga tape, Trodang, Samba, the Jaya Koranga Bay, then Rigitachi, Samba Jia, then Malam tap, the region of Sova tap, the Jeduga capsule, then a Korana 10 Yinkichik, drop Twiaki, then it change top down. Then it then dying, then a Korana long then the Achon Yoris.
And so one, of the biggest difficulties that he saw in the ordinary people when he was traveling, and also difficulties that he had for himself, was, that travelers were having a lot of trouble in water crossings in their travels. That, a lot of people would get carried away by the water, or their goods would get carried away by the water, and they would suffer a lot of losses in losing things down the rivers and so forth. But anyway, water crossings caused a lot of difficulty to people. And so he started getting the idea and started thinking that he wanted to work on developing bridges and boats and things like that. And so he, he made a lot of prayers and aspirations to be able to do that. And he had this great confidence in himself that he would be able to attain that. And so he really started to be able to, set himself and accomplish those tasks.
Nasatini, Ta Korangachi, any Tachawa Musunda was something also Jazam Teni tata sa jana ki tata tama jana dang phog sam tata tarse don yorwa. Tan dini zongde teni nga zo karesa ini ta khamne ya teni phog uni. Teni tama nga ran zo so ini ta jagarji asam dang drog dang ta tesogo bhardola. Teni halam jazam danga pi ngasomare. Ngani. Jazam tene ta samba tene ngapcho ngabje jabiores.
Ngajie, that's it. And so then, when he really started putting himself to this task, when he really started building these bridges, he made them all over the place, like in the borders between China and Tibet, in a place called Thangtong, and other places like between Eastern Tibet and Central Tibet, in Assam, India, connecting Assam with Bhutan and so forth. He made altogether 58 iron bridges.
Voilà, tene tena yinge truhen rewata trutende. Ta trutende tene pete kesere jata ngapchus ti jabe sare. Ta te drawo ge tene ta te ngazo ta truhen de sola yanta khora mise ke te kapsu tene shen sena ta ani trutende do ta trutende la ta te sola jik ta khora mise yang tamring ki jik ta khora mise ke ta cheda라고 여바다 되게 조금 골았더니 지 다른 것들이 요즘에 또 데네스게도 다 간단히 현생인데 되니 자당 압주스였더니 데스기야.
And so then he also made 150 of these special kinds of boats. Kempa Namcha.
Yes.
Di shen tan damjen ki tak sing ding yapuran go to mason chechik sunanda.
Yeah, it has ornament. Those boats has an ornament of the Hayagriva.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Situation.
So it is a special kind of boat, and those boats were all ornamented with a special sign of Hayagriva. That's it.
알았어. 얘네 다 대드라고때 법을 로지는 때나 법바 형도 속가 된다고 제 더만 은이 지는데 형도 계고도 그래는 코드 텐데스 산이 제 터미는 뭐도.
And if you think about this in Tibet, if no one else was able to do this, and really if someone were to do it, it should have been the government, but even the government wasn't able to do that task.
다티 탐지 제약의 탑대 소양 직대지 오르마 빼차 야버이나 되니 대소 탐지양 직 랑힌 밀어 올라 거와 잡고 되니 방보 첨보라 속바다 된데 작사체 되니 양나 된데 그 까다 뭐망라 양직 된데 그배 직다 두고 거르지는 된데 내가 정해 오르와 된데 말해스.
And in terms of the way that these bridges were actually built, it wasn't done in a way that like just a king or minister is like forcing or beating or commanding some workers to do the job. And so, it's not like those situations, like you hear a lot of stories in China where they're building some kind of new structures and, they just send as many people as necessary and they don't care how many people die and so forth. There are so many stories like that in the histories all over the world.
Like constructing the Great Wall of China.
Oh, constructing the Great Wall, yeah.
코랑게 대저워 지드네 많이 베톤 다 코랑게 탑차 미릭도네 다니 나요레스 다 뒤치고지 레멘도스 데네 다당가도 된데게 답변이 애니 다 루비아게 탑텔라야 다 미세게 코랑 소르도 망보지요레 다 티니 초직디 다다 데니 베는 데레스 다다 다 버지 누가르게 스테 소르도 지야바레 다다라 아지 라모스도 다티게 두거데서 아니 소토체 코랑게테니 다 당보 아니 두거게다 땡주테서 코랑게쌈 아니 테소가 로르차라 소바트서 담지 코랑게야 아니 저체 Then na yin get up, Pomo Mambo Tendela, Lobjun Treche. Then ta Casacala Coranta, Tangungaran to Tendis Jetene, Lamot the Chap. Then he met the Sotam Gelata. Caresagora, Yata, so do. Then it Troache. Then it is all a mixerki. Then it man, so more chepek. And it chooses also Jack.
And so he didn't, work in that way. He didn't use forced labor or anything like that, but he had, a lot of special methods in order to accomplish the tasks of building bridges and boats and so forth. And this, this activity of building bridges and boats wasn't his only thing. He was a very inventive person. So another important thing that he newly created, that he invented, was the what is very popular in Tibet now, the system of, or this practice, or performance of like an opera or like a musical theater. And so he was the first one to to start that in Tibet. So he composed the text, he composed the music that came along with the text. He taught the girls and the other performers like how to do the performances. And he spread this around in Tibet and really brought a lot of joy to the Tibetan people. And so then he also made a lot of effort and really emphasized the teachings and the giving people advice on how to recite the Mani mantra and so forth.
되게 아니 첩용돼서다 다다가 바르다 네 요데레 그래서 탐지게다 첩생당 얘네 대서 그 용돼서 탐지 코로나랑 그 좀네 네 대서 탐지게 직상 마트리스네 파체 첩 용 죽섬스제 요사 요 당도 다 땡땡랑 당면도 파체 첩용 죽섬스제 요사 당도 다대 탐지 장 되니 미서게야 장첩스 받대서다 다 미세게 지가랑 좀 배는 거를 보진다고 다도 말에 근데 대다고 배나 다당아 저거 다 미세게 배나 помек 다다 낭사원 범세네 다 배나 법ik 근데 다지 팀모이 받된다고 다 된대게 양 로주대서야 이제는 팬토야 휴지 모르제 토야 셈발아야 되니 나라도 가르쳐 거라 얘네 파 얘네 소소 탭토야 남바가 토리나 밑에서 직조와 제토비아 셈바 jor토비아 된리게 되네 답에고 드거게 되네 된다고 다 땡큐 된데 배 된다고 지 소도 할레바 주요스.
And so those theatrical texts, the scripts and so forth, even still exist now. And all totaled, I don't remember exactly, but I think there are 13 different plays or performances that he composed. And all of those are about bodhisattvas, the Guru Rinpoche, about the Buddha, about particular features of Tibetan life and so forth, historical accounts. And they can tell stories, they can give advice, they can give introductions to the principles of Buddhism. They can give people some consolation and some advice. And they also, in the form that they take, the way that they tell that advice is something that's inspiring and joyful, and something that is able to really touch people and transform their minds.
Any me mango be sembege thing chik provache khashie ta chik tindri pe te chin any mewe tini la sokar che teso chin mi chutang hai mango yor ta ten rawo tini chi che thobya ke tini teso ka ta ranging ni ba pe any ten rawo tini hamser te tu yores.
And then those performance texts, those scripts and so forth that he composed, many people, when they read those texts, it makes them feel very devoted and very from the depths of their heart, this feeling of devotion that it brings tears to their eyes. And they really have this power instilled in them. It's really incredible.
Roba jela, koma jeni, ta tamchi tene ranging pe chi karese, 마고르 당한께는 용 되는 농가 소소로 줘 되는 대라고 제제는 되는 배도 계속 안나서 삼바트서 야비하다 되는 된다고 되는 배는 짜트서 덤지 때렸다 되는 뜻서 덤지 위원은 되는 도스케들이 지금 안나서 배는 아니 내가 된 거 속여랬어.
And so, it was through all of these methods that he was able to help people and encourage them to practice virtue, encourage them to want to help others, and, really encourage them to want to assist. And so then when he really started to build these bridges and they needed to mine the iron ore and then, melt down and refine that iron ore and so forth, then he had all of these people that wanted to help him. And so, this really amazing and incredible history of Thangtong Gyalpo.
다 대양직 추대 소양 다 배직 다 소소 제소라 배래라고 멍기당라지 고라바 되니 배 년대바 다 미세게 배나다 많은 이게 동안라 속바게 되니 뭐저지야 다 코나도 참아 배나 당보 코랑 쪽 찹센터서 찹 되게 뒤에서 되니 나랑 조금마 뭐저지 되니 나랑 좀 상명이야 아니 된데스께는 되니 마고 당능 고조직 퇴접 마고 까능 마고 참자 마고 베토니 되니 도스께니 되니 다 내가 자체 못당 되니 된다고 되는 것도 된데스께니 아때지 당문이 좀 도와 된데께는 다 뭔가서 빼네 아니 탑 해봐 철도 폭도 되니까 네가 자점도 솔라서 버트비하게 돈이 롱바 첨보 차요래 애네 때는 인게 지금 알아서 되니 되니 샘라 펜 토요래 롱발라 펜 토요래 밤졸라 펜 토요래 카세 토로래.
And so then he gave, these very simple Dharma teachings that were easy for the ordinary public to understand, and really eloquent, really, simple to listen to and very pleasant to listen to. And so he would give advice on introduction to the meaning and the practice of the reciting of the 6-syllable Om Mani Padme Hum mantra. And so they would give, they would do these performances of these operas or musical theatrical performances, and then afterwards give some introduction to the Dharma and encourage people towards some kind of, Dharma practice and virtuous practices. And then when he would do that, then he wouldn't need to, even tell anyone to do anything. People just voluntarily wanted to help. So there was no need to collect taxes for the construction of bridges or to order people to do that, to order people to help him, or for a king or minister to order the construction of a bridge and so forth. But the people were inspired to voluntarily help out to assist him in building these structures and so forth. And that's how he was able to, accomplish such extensive, activities, such extensive projects. And so that's what's meant by when we use the term skillful means, that he was very skilled. He was very skillful in how he was able to accomplish these projects. And so, and how much benefit, was he able to produce, both in the immediate circumstances and ultimately in terms of, helping with building the bridges and in helping with, with those bridges, then helping the ordinary people's lives in their day-to-day lives, in inspiring them in the Dharma and assisting them in terms of their mental life, their emotional life, in terms of assisting their financial lives, because these bridges were really helpful in their trade and so forth. So how much, it's really miraculous, really incredible how much benefit Thangtong Gyalpo was able to bring. That's
so teni ta tetam ji ma se teni ta ngaran zoge ani pachereta oji mensi kangseng de sonya hanam ta tangung go chungme de konang resha.
And not only that, but also it's likely the case that the first medicine and astrology schools in Tibet were also started by Thangtong Gyalpo.
Teni ta tenang ji ta konang kasa kala phegyo ta konang ni ro ji li yugo ma. 이나양 되는 코로나랑 다 맹기던데 배더니 망보 저래 다 등상 다다가 봐도 빼는다 깨다 여기 빼는다 두톱 저거다 레말라 속았다 된제게 되는 거좀 맨데 망보 저지는 되는 롱바트서 담필지 아니 맨주 제야다 되는 된제게 제야 배 미세박 되는 거다 약과 첨부 제요랬어
And then also, Thangtong Gyalpo never stayed in one place. He was always, wandering about, going here and there. But he also made a lot of medicines himself, medicines that are still used today, famous medicines. And so he provided medical service in a lot of the places he went, and he was very, very helpful in that manner as well. And so then also the just kind of the appearance that he took, the way that people perceived him, is that he was a hermit. He was, he called himself, he said he's the Thangtong Gyalpo, the madman of 1,000 lands, of the empty lands. And so of 1,000 roads or 1,000 lands. And so he didn't ever stay in one place. He went everywhere. There's practically nowhere that he didn't go. And wherever he showed up, he would help people. He would provide medical assistance. He would teach Dharma. He would build bridges, and then he would go on his way. And so there was no certainty as to where he was going to be. And so he went all over the place. And so when he was young, he was so enthusiastic and so diligent that people called him they said he was like crazy diligent, that he was the crazy diligent one, because he was always thinking of new things and he was always able to accomplish them. He had this confidence that he could do it. So.
Hola, sueni de nang yin ta kong pe na ta ti ki korang ki cha ji de so yang pe ta nga so yo de se ta sa ma pho gi pa de ni ta chi yong su chi te ki gar che ne sa ma ta ja na ni ting sang pe ta tu yor dam ja gar ki ta nga ran so ma shar chok ta ma yor da so tam ji ta thang no jer bi ja ya jok cha zam ma go yor Any Chodam Goyore, Akam Goyore, Tata, Musu Jedea Petani, that the Solayam Goyores.
And even now, many of his, projects, many of the things that he accomplished still are around now. Right now, you can still go and, many of his iron bridges are still around. They still exist in Tibet and China and Bhutan and Eastern Bhutan and so forth. And many of the stupas that he built and temples that he built and so forth, you can still go to them to this day. They're still there. La. And so that's all just one side of his activities, more of the, his worldly life.
Yeah. Jigdelen deba de mangbo khuju yore da pin tin na da so de tran shogona shu saya yo mare te inayang da tin na yin ki tin da nga so be tin de mangbo tin kong kawala phebna te tamjara tin mixer ki chik ta korang ene mama tin ta choden da la khang da tin ta mixer ke sane tin sa ta be mixer ki chik nga so tin orwa 사 가르침보다 네 가르침보다는 레라들은 쇼대한다 라강당 네 주자다 되게 답변이 계속 루칸다. 되네 냠냠바 되게 할래바 망고 쓰고요레스.
And so in terms of his, super mundane or spiritual life, then, if I wanted to get into all the details, I could never finish that today. But anyway, just some things is that, wherever he went, he ended up with a lot of students. And then in very key points, like kind of power places and holy blessed places, he established, stupas and temples and retreat centers and established his students, placed them in retreat and so forth.
다 코랑게 다롱양 치치치 가르레세나 되네 코랑베다 아니 어다 밀라 토멘텐데다 되네 이엠제데 싸네요 말스 코랑나 답베데 코랑가 가마 포몰레 이엠제요 말에 초면레 이엠제요 말에 미천보다 충청 되네 체벌 깨고요 말스.
And another, very particular thing about him or special feature of his is that he never discriminated against anyone or never made any distinctions between whether someone was of high status or low status, old or young, male or female, whatever, in terms of his ordinary interactions or in his disciples or in any aspect of his life.
되네 마세게 코랑그냐는 파제를 롱엔드소 코를 망와때서 파제 되는 아람소 보모만 거 여사래. 대양한테는 로충경 가르레스는 다 코랑그 제거와 쪼다당아란 조급에는 이니 가르세 거로고 다 탑도한테서 담비 제거와 탑도한테서 제알라 되는 미세게 로충경당 연애들의 고고도와 너다 된데서 되는 미담지 그 메인들을 마시 미드서다 뭐 희고요 말아 다때 송은의 장이기 라모미나 카르인사들 미드서고야 다다 라뮤 차병세는 상말로 메인들 라뮤 차병세 메인 토바래 Jumse Karadesena, Takoto Lomba Drama, the Drabo Tape, the Nikozo Benandoya, Port Tabia, got the name, the age of Capsata, Samige, then a Maintela, Lamos, and then a Tonodoa, then a Lamu Trabion, Lamos, that the next then it's how much around Zope, any Yekto to be a drabo. The Lake touching around Zoga, any Tatean Kozo Benet, and a tablet heavy. That is the pure 2 money, but it was.
And then another thing is that in terms of those who traveled with him in his retinue, there were more women than men, and quite a few young people as well, because they were always doing these performances, the operatic performances and so forth, and there was mainly the young people that would do the performances, and so many people didn't know what to call the performances, but they were called the operas of the goddesses. That was kind of the name. But then everyone just started referring to the performances just as Hamo. Hamo means goddess or female divinity, something like that. So they just call those performances goddess. And it's just like the name for it now. Like everyone calls it that. Everyone knows what it is. And it's like, if you say Hamo or they're performing Hamo, the goddess, then everyone knows what you're talking about.
양 고란라더니 출록다 소라 고조더니 추리 싸와니네 요 말했어.
And he also had no bias at all or no sectarianism about the different religious sects.
다 번호는 알아서 출록도 소라미나 고조 몽보 여러 왔을 때깔다 고랑 뺐나 에네 고란다고 이나 다 지금 아주 닝마 에네 대나긴 가라서 에네 사자 조낭 가주 다베는 향추 향바 다때서 담비 베는 출록 용서 줘봐 다띠값서 되네 라마 트락바진 용조 땡 근데 대탐지야 사자 가와라 베는 베나다 나나도 고난다 님이나는 쪼다 장들기다 쪼대다 고난함 장들이라고 그래 되네 향추 되네 대나긴 베나 대나긴 다 베나 에네 대자버와 답변을 사자까지 용서 줘봐라. 근데서 난거 여봐서다 다다 용서 잡아 탐식이 다 탕통 열버서나 님마게는 딱 와서 님이 기다라마 연애면에 대이 삼대 그래. 향바 가지고는 다 탕통 열버서니 와서 향바게 인상 그래. 사자기나 대리상 그래. 배나 되네 된자고지다. 다때야 공부트니 퉁마에 버려도
And so then, there's lots of these different spiritual traditions within Tibet, and he received teachings and practiced in all of these traditions, like from the Nyingma, Sakya, Jonangpa, the Kagyu, and then particularly within the Kagyu, the Shangpa Kagyu. And so he, received teachings from all of the famous lamas of his era, and wherever he went, he would receive those teachings from whatever great masters were around. And particularly in the Nyingma tradition, he was primarily focused in the Northern Treasures tradition. But anyway, he became, so engaged with all of the different traditions in such non-sectarian manner that, like, if you talk to the Nyingmas and you say to a Nyingma Lama about Thangtong Gyalpo, they say, oh yeah, Thangtong Gyalpo is one of our lamas. He's Nyingma Lama. But then the same, if you talk to a Shangpa Kagyu Lama, then Shangpa Kagyus will also say, oh yeah, Thangtong Gyalpo is one of our teachers. He's a Shangpa Lama. And with the Sakyas as well, if you talk to the Sakyas will say, oh yeah, Thangtong Gyalpo is our Lama. He's like in our tradition, So that's another one of his like very special features.
그래서 드니레스 딱 강다 당가랑 속에 이니 자연 친지 왕보다 드니 당가랑 좀 친지를 못해 이니 다 빼나 콩나 반다고 직발하셨어.
And so the same goes also for Jamin Khyentse Wangpo and also for Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche, like the same type of situation as Thangtong Gyalpo, like that.
라서 이니 드니 son다 공배의 기절을 당 이니 다 바꿔 지는 이니 다 코레기 팀 많이 변로던 정해 줘야 돼. 기ren세기 고는 제거요래 기ren세기 남초래 대대 공부되는 제야고 기ren세기 곰딘 대양 로던 가자마 매양 따요래 다따양 용서 줘봐 되니 라테네 마셔봐 매버래 용서 줘봐를 닦고 이니 딱 샵되요래스.
And so then he, really particularly in a special way or an uncommon way, like relied upon Avalokitesvara in terms of his practice. He was also an emanation of Avalokitesvara himself. And then his sadhana text, this practice text called The Far-Reaching Benefit of Beings Extensive as Sky, is also now, even to this day, something which is spreading. It is pervaded everywhere. Like it is practiced by everyone and pervades everywhere.
몰라서 다디 드링 와서 마 냠내지 했더라 그런 곰디 세요와 이는 디게 제서 마 계약을 녹수 때양 곰농세네 다 친절 뭐지가 대자고 지난 거요래 가르세는 와서 마 냠는도 되니 냠나 해 되니 냠나 곰 된데스 계약이래 대때 그런 거 메인텔라양 되니 곰디 세고요래 되니 때라 미세 곰농세 시야당 곰야 송도 드레르 티트니 마마 다 잡지도 친절 뭐지가 드레난 거를 드랭하라서 대가랑 자인스.
And so then when we are practicing, when we talk about this practice, it says the visualization and mantra recitation. And so also, when this is taught, like Khyentse Rinpoche, when he would teach this, he would teach it and then we would meditate together during the teachings. And so, that would be a combination of a teaching and a practice together, like that we would practice and receive the teaching together. And so we're also going to do that together tonight. So first we're going to go for refuge and then generate bodhicitta. So those to whom we are going for refuge are the three jewels, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. And then so those are the objects, the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha to whom we're going for refuge, and the time of our going for refuge is from now until we attain enlightenment. So it says, I take refuge until I attain enlightenment in line number 2. And so that's refuge, those first 2 lines. And when we say that I'm going to work for beings until I attain enlightenment, then that also becomes bodhicitta, the generation of bodhicitta.
다 되니마 나기 진수지 비선함지 로라 펜처 산진 로버쇼 다 셈제레스.
And so then those second two lines that say, through the merit of practicing generosity and so on, may I attain Buddhahood for the benefit of beings. That's the generation of bodhicitta.
다 대양 당고다 베드케스레 애니 미여르테 다 셈제 난 로아 셈제 탐치게 애니 다 베드케스레 애니 탐치게 애니 단테 다기 두구인 셈제 탐치게 더 두구인 생에다 데코도 셈제스네 데켈랭고 요르바스.
And so when we say that when we commit ourselves that we're going to work for the benefit, we're going to accomplish the benefit of all beings, then that is the generation of bodhicitta, or the commitment of bodhicitta.
다 데라 되는 아란조고 애니 아주 다 셈제지 돈 두구인 생에 마바 셈제레 다 대양 아란조고 애니 셈제지 돈 우스 두베아테 다 베드케서 상초 애니 게 다 라발라와 상교스 라발라 주구인세 다 라바 응을은 주가라와 라바 응을스 주네 되네 베네 세메바게다 바로도 침바 졸라 소벌 고니 베네다 셈제지 돈 두구인세고 요르바.
And so then just the thought, like, I'm going to work for the benefit of beings, that's what we call aspirational bodhicitta. But then we engage with bodhicitta by following the trainings of bodhicitta. So there are these actual trainings of bodhicitta, such as the Four Immeasurables and the Six Perfections. And when we engage in those, then our aspiration becomes an engagement.
Voilà, so that they have been at any Thangtong Gyalpo Koran Gang, Semje Jenny, Yok the Minoa, that better Semje Donna. Then that better just a part of the Chimbato, Jimba, Satam Zobat, some there here of last of Benetang around Zogotape, that tap the Nichik, any part maybe Tony Semje just don't drop a nine, then around Zogayan, Druguin, set up, there he happened.
And so then Thangtong Gyalpo as well, he didn't just make that aspiration and then just drop it. He made the aspiration and then chose to engage in that through these perfections of generosity, discipline, efforts, patience, meditative concentration, wisdom. And so it's not just a matter of generating the intention, but also of engaging in that. So then it says through the practices of generosity and so forth. Less.
So ta nge te nang yinge tene ta nga zo pakwa tiren ze sanje chenyo so ba tamjige nge te nang yinge ene nga ke tamja wa nang yin tene roba shinjalab so samne so wata monamja ta teres.
And so we are, we want to say, like, just as they did, just as Avalokitesvara and so forth, I also want to accomplish the benefit of beings through all of these practices and so forth. And so we aspire and we supplicate for the blessings of Avalokitesvara that we are able to do so. We're going to recite this together 3 times.
Sanje Chudang,
Sanje Chutang,
Soje Chonamla,
Soke Chonamla,
Shangcho Pardo,
Yangcho Pardo,
Dani Chapsuche,
Dani Chapsuchi,
Dagi Jinso,
Dagi Jinso,
Yibi Sonamji,
Jipe Sonamge,
Rola Penzer,
Rola Pincher,
Sanje Robert Show,
Sanje Dubar Show,
Sanje Chudang,
Sanje Chutang,
Soje Chonamla,
Soke Chonamla,
Shangcho Pardo,
Jancho Pardo,
Dani Chapsuche,
Dagi Chapsuchi,
Dagi Jinso,
Dagi Jinso,
Yibi Sonamji,
Jipe Sonamge,
Rola Penzer,
Rola Pincher,
Sanje Robert Show,
Sanje Dubar Show.
In
the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly, I take refuge until I attain enlightenment. Through the merit of practicing generosity and so on, may I attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all beings.
Voilà, so ta ting aranzo pena any capsun rowa to shang give to sem kia ba yin sambachi as.
So now think that you have taken refuge and generated bodhicitta.
Ta tini gomlong mate ta ba yin.
So that's our motivation, our real motivation for the practice.
Ta ti gomlong sena kande sego yoresena. Ta ngaranzo go ma sheki tel gom ti kyabu yores tel gomlong seres.
And so now we have explained this, but now we need to actually put it into practice. So now we're going to engage in the meditation.
Transmission. Now transmission for the
the meditation and transmission, like the Lung and the meditation transmission.
You should repeat after.
Yeah, repeat after Rinpoche.
Hola, so ta ti kande chego yoresena. Ta any daso kachep semgen je se ta ngaranda. Te nangyin teni ta nangki karchep ke semgen tam che nyamdo yo samgo gres. Tam che ngaso nyamdo yos.
And so the first line here where it says, for me and all sentient beings throughout the whole of space, when we recite this, we need to think that all sentient beings in all realms of space are all together here with me.
Hola, so ta ti rere ki thola ta pen ngarang so mi rere ki teni ta ya kyubo go zola me to Pema kar. Eni rere gom gores me to Pema kar.
And then on the crown of the head of each and every one of those sentient beings, we have to imagine that there's a white lotus flower.
Hola, so ta me to Pemi simru tela teni dawachi gom shos.
And then on top of that lotus flower, imagine that there's a white moon.
Hola, so ta ti chena to nyamlo gomrochi as.
And so now meditate, do this visualization right now together.
Hola, so ta yang ti ke teni ngarang zoge dawi ke ting tena teni yege shikar poshi gom shos.
And then on top of that white moon is a white syllable Shri. And the syllable Shri is in the Tibetan. It's the first syllable of the third line of this deity visualization, that first letter there with the two dots next to it.
Ta Shri ten kare chongo oresena. Ta ngarang sanji kitang kita sanji to sola ta jawa ringa orwa jawa ringa ke nani teni pen ani pemi ke rex ta sanji pemi re ta pete ke ser ani nga zo oba medang kiren zaidang teni nga zo ngoro moji la sopa ta te tham che nga zo pen pemi re to ti zo ke teni korang rek chongo ores rek.
And so what is that Shri syllable, what does it symbolize? What does it represent? So it represents the lotus family. So we talk about the 5 Buddha families, and one of those is the lotus family. And inside the lotus family, we have the Buddha Amitabha, Avalokitesvara, and Guru Rinpoche. So this Shri syllable represents the lotus family.
Hola, so ta de yang miser ke kare chongo resena ta pena de thamji ke thok ta ti nangni ta pe de ke sen miser ta kiren de ke hingje chembo tere do wa thok hingje chembo pena ta thok zewa chembo ta hingje chembo ti tene ta ngara zo number 3 chodu kin ne nga zo ta gonggo res.
And what else we need to think of, particularly what this represents, is great love and great compassion. And so we need to imagine that this Shri is there in the aspect, or it is itself like great love and great compassion.
Ala so ta tela teni ngaran zo ta pe chi nga zo ya ini gom che che te da chep che do teni ngaran zo ya hingget ani ta ngaran zo pe che ser ya ani gombala teni ta tele o zer chu che teni sanje tam che chu teni semje je dongar tam che pa ser ta tonda ki tin korang tonda ni che gores.
And so now by meditating, we should be meditating on this. And by meditating on that great love and great compassion, imagine that light rays shine out from the 3 syllables and shine out and radiate out and make offerings to all the Buddhas and then radiate out and clear away the sufferings and difficulties of all sentient beings.
Tene yang wode tsuru du jene shite la tsu tamba dang tene ta nga zo shite ma geji ma ane wode sheche tene ta jeren zai chaji ba ji de chorsong samachis.
And then when those light rays come back and dissolve back into the Hri syllable, that Hri syllable dissolves into light and instantly becomes a four-armed Avalokitesvara.
So ta tida tini kanriji yoresena tini pe shar zihin zomba ene to minge chenbo da denshi.
And then Avalokitesvara appears in this form where he is very handsome and smiling and appears as, having this incredible heart of compassion.
Ta pena tini nga zo genchi ningsen tuto la simjen tamje la pe ngarang zo ene ta amege tini chik ngarang zo pula tsewa nangi simjen tamje la tsewi genchi pet kyosere ta ene sumzom me ba tini nga zo tsewi goni tini genchi ma zekde ba shis.
And that Avalokitesvara is with his eyes are constantly, day and night, in all times, looking with great love, like the love of a mother for her only child, upon all sentient beings with these loving eyes, not even blinking for a moment, but constantly looking upon them with love. And has four arms, right?
Jamba tsemi, hinge tsemi, gawa tsemi. Da deyang semjen tam kele nyereng chadang mebi, tam kele nyambani yoba sonda tangyum tsemi, di vijede tsondega yores.
And those four arms represent the four immeasurables, the immeasurable love, immeasurable compassion, immeasurable joy, and the immeasurable equanimity of being free from attachment to those who are close to us and distance from others.
So
the upper two arms are brought together in the prayer mudra. And those two hands joining together represent the equality of all beings. And then the two lower arms hold in a crystal rosary and a white lotus.
Da pede kesere ini da kinezege togoma de da koso ini shiraptang mingerwa da tapte shirapni donatini shirjitwa de da zobotene tangaran zobena shiraptu changgoyore dene tatangaran zob pema karabotigi ini tanga zo pede kesere ini da karse ini
and so those two things symbolize what is the reality of the enlightened mind, or you could say the heart of Avalokitesvara, which is wisdom and compassion. And so the crystal rosary represents Avalokitesvara's wisdom, and the white lotus represents this compassion.
아니 다때나 인게 되네 땅가서 지내서 기단 거 농구를 봐 산지 농구 끝나 봐 농구세도 되네 가서 다 프로코스나 산지 새겨도 반다고 개농구 나봐라 다 지내서 때 농구가 나봐 농구가 나봐서도 되네 몰라 봐요 봐 되네 다땅가서 가르서네 이니 다 콜라테네 다 rumbo치기 제 배차게나다 년년다 아니 때나 인 고르젠다 차도다 Shabdobla Sopatani, Rinpoche Jen, Petini,
And Avalokitesvara is a Sambhogakaya Buddha. And so, Nirmanakaya Buddha is like, for example, the Buddha Shakyamuni, who appears as a fully ordained monk. But Avalokitesvara appearing in the form of a Sambhogakaya or as a Sambhogakaya Buddha, then Sambhogakayas have the long knotted hair, tied up hair at the top. And they are adorned with precious jewelry. So they have earrings and necklaces and long necklaces and wrist bracelets and anklets and so forth, the 6 types of jewels of the Sambhogakaya. And then the 5 crown of the 5 Buddhas at the top of their head. And together also ornamented with the silken robes. So there's an upper silken robe, a lower silken skirt, a diadem like the silken tassels that come down from the crown, a silken shawl or scarf that floats around in his arms and so forth. And then one very special, like uncommon piece of clothing or adornment that Avalokitesvara has is he has an antelope pelt draped over his shoulder. And that particular animal, the antelope, we consider that to be a greatly compassionate animal. And so why is Avalokitesvara wearing all of these adornments and special robes and so forth? So it is to show that Avalokitesvara has not abandoned samsara. And what does that mean? Why did Avalokitesvara not abandon samsara? It's because Avalokitesvara committed to work for the benefit of sentient beings until the end of samsara. So he committed to never leave samsara until all sentient beings leave samsara. And so him wearing those particular robes and jewelry and so forth show that he not only has not abandoned samsara, but he is voluntarily staying in samsara. He's voluntarily taking up samsara, engaging with samsara. And so Avalokitesvara's commitment is such that even if he had to stay another eon in samsara just for one more being, just for the sake of one being, that he wouldn't even be the slightest bit irritated by that. That no matter how much he needs to work, he just becomes even more encouraged by that. No matter how much he needs to work, he just feels more enthusiasm and more joy for that. And so that's what these jewels and silken robes and so forth represent. And then it says that Amitabha, boundless light, is his crown adornment. So sitting at the crown of Avalokitesvara's head is Amitabha. And the reason is because Amitabha is the Lord of the lotus family, the family of speech. And so to show that and to show that the Lord of the Buddha family that Avalokitesvara is a part of is Amitabha, then Amitabha rests at the crown of his head. And then his two legs are in the seated Vajra posture. And what does that represent? That represents that Avalokitesvara neither falls into the extremes of personal peace or the conditioned existence. So essentially what that means is that it represents the equanimity or the equality of samsara nirvana. And really, in the ultimate understanding, Avalokitesvara already attained Buddhahood many thousands of eons ago. But because of his bodhicitta intention and aspirations to never attain enlightenment until the end of samsara, he continues to take the form, to show the appearance or take the form of a bodhisattva, a great bodhisattva. And so a great bodhisattva, and that's why the representation of the legs in the cross-legged form or in the lotus or vajra form represents that he's actually neither stained by or neither falls into either extreme of samsara or nirvana. And then a stainless moon supports him at his back. And so what does this stainless moon represent? So generally speaking, if one is a bodhisattva, then they are still different than a Buddha. And the difference remains that there are still what we call cognitive obscurations in the mind stream of a bodhisattva. If there were no such cognitive obscurations, then there would be no difference between a Buddha and bodhisattva. And so, but Avalokitesvara, countless eons ago, already attained complete Buddhahood. So he doesn't even have those cognitive obscurations. He has no stains. And so even though he appears as a bodhisattva in ultimate truth or ultimate reality, he's not a bodhisattva. He is actually a fully enlightened Buddhahood appearing as a bodhisattva. And so that stainless moon behind him represents that he is without any of these stains. He has already transcended the cognitive obscurations that would separate a bodhisattva from a Buddha.
올라서 다 된대지 손자데 되니 짬니 군동 오버 저 짬니 군동 오버 검세.
And so then it says, he is the essence and embodiment of all sources of refuge.
아야. 다 노르드나 되니 제렌자이데 짬니 군도 중오.
So Avalokitesvara is essentially, he contains, like he is the embodiment of all objects of refuge.
올라서 dorna 되니 따당아 저 톡상제. 에네 톡드 상제레 송데 담추레. 네, 다 거대 되네 장조선 봤음 초르도 용도 대과 침부 되네 견들레. 그래서 다 빼나 에네 건조 솜 담긴 되대봐.
So Avalokitesvara's mind is the Buddha, his speech is the Dharma, and his body, taking the form of a great Mahabodhisattva, is the Mahayana Sangha. And so he fully embodies all of the three jewels.
다 동양 때는 가란 쪽 예비 돈데 제바이나 아니 다 아니 바과지렌즈게 톡 아니 다당 가란 쪽 빼나다 추거래도 그래 추고와 밤에다 있으면 해봐래 아니 대나경게 때는 다 가란 쪽 아니 송고 그 남바 아니 다당 가란 쪽 바과지렌즈게 남바 샤도 요래 아니 가르세고 에네 다 되니 꾸트비고에 남바 되니 강도 나 쪽비고네 다 패드께서래 당아란 쪽에 심견했던 나 쪽바되니 강도 제바 인상 되니 다 되나기 죽을 놈고 죽고 대양 상도 요레스.
And then, in the real definitive meaning, in the ultimate level of understanding, then Avalokitesvara's mind is the Dharmakaya and is inseparable from Amitabha. And his speech is the Sambhogakaya, inseparable from Avalokitesvara, appearing as Avalokitesvara. And his body is a Nirmanakaya, which can appear in any form, whatever is necessary for any being to be tamed. So then again, Avalokitesvara in himself, in the ultimate understanding, is an embodiment of all of the Dharmakaya, Sambhogakaya, and Nirmanakaya.
야야, 되네 다 람만이 이마체 제네데 등아서 다 바과 제네데 등아서 라마레 예담레 다 가레서 그렇고 얘네 다 강제 버지 찍나란서 미센자가 지는 차지하고이나 얘네 라미칼와 빼만종이 생에데 바과 제네데 기더니 가서 뭐마다 둘지게 던다 미 남발라 마트는 패운교다 근데 뭐만 그런 거지라 대야 기네들이 에네 대나인게 되네 다 가서 빼는 게서래 에네 다 아니 예담 다 빼는 게서래 다 바과 지rense 시와다도 바과 지rense 토고다도 지나더니 다 가란 저거 빼나 다 담링라 속과 따버다 에네 칸로마 지나더니 제든 로마라 속과 에네 다 빼나 상와예 실라 속과 따버다 빼는 게서는 도나다 아니 칸로 담게장 지rense런 뒤려래.
And so then, of course, also when we Avalokitesvara is also our Lama. He is our Yidam deity, and it's said that the particular special teacher or guru who is the special who is like the fortune or the destiny of the Tibetans is Guru Rinpoche, and Guru Rinpoche himself is the Avalokitesvara in human form. And so, he's Avalokitesvara in his peaceful form appears as Avalokitesvara, and his wrathful form can appear as Hayagriva, also can appear as Tara, as Dakini or Sangwaishi. So also all Dakinis are also contained within Avalokitesvara.
근데 다다 셔리죽부게 댄싱이 지에chen 강경 중 팔 채와지 빼놨다 애니 양 바과 지렌서당 예준 잠버리 양당 근데 다 빼는 게서 대 남비게 되네 다치 애니 다 상회다고 차르도질라 속밤도나 때 탐치 그지 가나 간도 그트바 짱짱 아주 퀸을 랭케랭 거 여러와스 어다 때라고레스.
And also, all of the great masters of Tibet and so forth who are still with us today, we recognize that they are all, appearing in whatever form is necessary to tame beings, but in essence are themselves Avalokitesvara, Manjushri, the Lord of Secrets, Vajrapani, and so forth. Okay, so let's do this meditation and recite this together.
Daso kachab semjenje.
Daso kachab semjenje.
Chizo pekar davi ting.
Chizo pekar davi ting.
Shrele pamjo jiren zay.
Shrele pacho chenrisi.
Kasaro zir ngatan den.
Karsa was ngatan den.
Zinzom tukje jenje zay.
Zinzom tukje chengi zik.
Sabye tango tabjirin zay.
다시 당보 타절제
원이 셔팅 백가nam
원이 셔팅 백가남
달다른 젠젠지
달다른 진젠지제
다다 빠피 도요솔
리다 빠페 도요소
오바미피 우젠젠
오바메베 우젠첸
샤브니 도르제 주동요
샤브니 도르지 초동쇼
드메 다바르 잡템바
드메 다워르 잡템바
짬니 군둥어워죠
짬니 군둥어워죠
나서 다소 답을 당아서 셈 다체게 그 소바다고요 삼비키는 테네라양테 냠는 도르고스.
And now imagine dingi inji konyan jedu chena diksarabela kandichi. So from now on, when Rinpoche recites in Tibetan and we need to recite after him, let's just recite it in English. It makes more sense that way. So now imagine that you are single-pointedly supplicated, praying and recite after me now. Again. Lasso di o di jo chungi maku kutokar sengdere. Okay. Yeah, so let's recite the visualization in English one more time, and then we'll move on to the next part. So again, from for me and all sentient beings throughout the whole of space, on the crowns of our heads, seated on white lotus and moon, is a Shri, out of which noble Avalokitesvara appears. Brilliantly white and radiating 5-colored rays of light. He has a captivating smile and gazes with eyes of compassion. The first 2 of his 4 hands are clasped together. The lower 2 hold a crystal rosary and white lotus. He's adorned with silken garments and jewels, and an antelope pelt is draped over his shoulder. Amitabha, boundless light, is his crown adornment. His 2 legs are in the seated Vajra posture, and a stainless moon supports him at his back. He's the essence and embodiment of all sources of refuge. So maybe everyone just try and do that meditation and try and clarify that, read it again for yourself until Rinpoche comes back.
Dasola datini da sovatapate that delecik mises in the Gajamento, that's the check to Sovatapni, around the Gajarangaretinity, my yam nothing to check and to yours.
Okay, so now we're just going to say this supplication prayer. So imagine that you're single-pointedly supplicating, and I don't need to explain the words. We can just read the prayer and you'll understand. So let's just go ahead and recite this prayer.
Ngarang da simpien tam chigi nyam de tene 답변은就是야 얘네 답하고 지는 자기라다 지금 아주 서로 제 답변이 되는 세다다 치마 바로 탐지다 얘네 점제나 체체 냠비고 소았다고요 삼바지 아스.
And what we should be thinking is that we are reciting this prayer together in one voice with all sentient beings, and that we're praying to Avalokitesvara that please look upon me, please know me in this lifetime, in my future lifetime, in the bardo, in life and in death. Please think of me, and then recite these words. Rinpoche, 직강 차장들이 직don쇼딩에 엔지 제두체 오라라.
라세. 저 전저마고 꿈도 가르 조상 기제.
Precious Lord, your body white and unblemished.
조상 기제 월라제.
Your crown adorned with the perfect Buddhas.
투제 젠제 롤라제.
Your eyes of compassion gazing on all beings.
제렌 자일라.
Avalokitesvara, to you I pay homage.
Laso tati ini tata teji doa. Ini dera tata. Yelab dimba dang tini tata duso tamji di Thangtong Gyalpo tila yo mare. Tini di yenda ni tata nga tsu ya sab yabat tini tini tata duso tini nga tsu tuso ya mido ni duso tini tata di Tong mes koto Thangtong Gyalpo rangi zebek yong kyangba di tino ni duso yo mare si.
So in the original form of this text composed by Tongtong Gyalpo, this next section of the 7 branches is not there. This is something that someone else copied and added into this ritual text. So we don't have time to go through this, and it's also not necessary. So I'm going to stick with just moving on to the next part. That's the original practice of Tongtong Gyalpo.
Tambo yala dimbate tene yang te jitsu kirenza ke pache Jesus on so tere gyalon ma panen zeba yinsa yo tene tig wo ge mana ge dumre do ke te yang ta Thangtong Gyalpo ge tema thak pe che ban ra bu chi sa ge yore top ngo drop singen te ene khong ge zeba ji yinsa re ta te so tam je tene nga zo chur yang po je lama de so chu trek je ne tene ya tene so ene te zo ya ba re tene so da ta tene nge Thangtong Gyalpo ge ko ti en rodon kaje mag yong chipo te tene ma logo yenda tini ma tetar tseki sota pi senge tene ma to ti part so tene yo mares tene teso tene chidang te so loju na shine tene res.
Okay, so anyway, the next section, this section of the 7 branches is was composed by Geloma Pelmo, who was someone who was directly held in the compassionate heart of Avalokitesvara. She was like an accomplished master of Avalokitesvara, and she composed these lines, and then they were added into this. And then that next section was also accomplished by added in by another great master of Tibet. But those aren't the original words or the original text. Those were put together by other Tibetans in order to make a more complete ritual practice text. So I'm not going to go through those tonight, and we're just going to go directly to the next section. That's the part of the original text of Thangtong Gyalpo.
Tani ngaran zo pugo chinchong kapne tani nima takpala gomo takpala tani ngaso phaila luksu tani jore ama go umze je tani ngaso pe tani korama pugo kasa ta sama mi sama khala se tani nyera ga tani kozo ma amege ta me ma choya gi jukwa to o tege dol ma don tani umze je je ter takpar tani don tago yore te chine drama samba do pa chen lan se me tani rodon khacha man do That is on to Puchincho, you get those Shella Mashilla Cup, Yama Tapper, telling us about the Gazetine, and Pache, Tangaranzo, Amig Chuda, what the Chados are Amig Jubandovich. What that those chicken and Tapper, no, the taping out, you gave me the current the time and I to pay. And then the Tata Young and the Tapper, the Lola Yore.
And so when I was young, like back in our homeland, we would, almost every evening we would, my mother would, the mothers of families, my mother as well would like act as like a chant master and would hold like a stick that we used for stirring the fire and be like the chant master kind of, and we would recite like a lot of the prayers like the 21 Taras and clearing the obstacles to the path and the spontaneous fulfillment of all wishes and this practice. And so, even back when we were young and we didn't really even know clearly how to read, we had these texts memorized, and I still have it memorized from back then.
mainly Gondon secretary, Gondon set up Gomon that they go Halam not to keep my the Halam Makamcho to Samala that Yenda Samala Michitan, another Longwayna, Chatang did away yours.
And we referred to that as evening recitations, and I don't think it was just our family. We also sometimes called this like Rinpoche said, that we could call this like the mother dharma, like because it was always our mother who was like leading the recitations. But I don't think it was just our not just my family. It was like not just our region, but like all of Eastern Tibet, all of the Kham region, I think had this tradition of evening recitations.
Honest, that didn't take that such a sort of be singing the wall at the number of your go, did that such a sort of be singing the telepath to Rokuta.
The color dula.
Dema could delegate unramen did that such a sort of in public or other true singing telere.
Continue with where it says, through praying single-pointedly in this way.
Yeah.
Gyalpo, where? At the end of the 7-branch prayer?
Rinpoche is going to go till that, so yeah.
Yeah, what?
Check it some to tender. The Kutu Koga near without it. Mari. That's such a sort of pay.
It's just, yeah, at the end.
That's such a sort of in public or other true singing dinner.
Oh, so there's there's a whole large section that is added in by other people. So it's all the way down. Unfortunately, this document doesn't have page numbers, so it's not easy to tell you where to go. But if you skip all the way down, there's a section that says, through praying single-pointedly in this way. You have to skip way past a lot of this stuff.
So that's what that needs. Any so the lens on Dabney. That's all lens on Dabney. And it I young around so good that so that public was the truth, and I just saw a double at any, then Paquachinas and Jacole or Zeritma. That's simply a Tampino, Zerdima, true song, some go res.
And so it says through praying single-pointedly in this way. So if you were like, maybe you recited the supplication 3 times, then you would say now, through praying single-pointedly in this way, rays of light stream forth from the Noble One's form. And you imagine that those light rays go out and they strike or they reach all living beings.
So
we need to think that those light rays went out to all the realms in all directions.
Legend nang yagwate tando ranging tropa yo mareko any le range soso range teni petkese any leta nyom buketene wange nawa yinsang trobare de tabogotene trobiki shiba seta sennoji tan roari dola sopa getene de tamje ke nawa tamche jang pa any ta pongbani do chorsong seno teso tamje pa teni nga so pongbani do pa jang.
And so then it says that they purify impure karmic perception and delusion. And so all of the realms or the experiences of the 6 realms are all perceptions coming from people's karma. And so, but ultimately they don't exist inherently or in and of themselves, but they are merely appearing because of our karma and our afflictive thoughts and emotions. And so therefore, because they are not truly existing, but they merely appear due to our karma and our afflictive emotions, then they are delusion. They are delusion. And so we need to imagine that when the light rays come and appear and radiate out to all lands, that all the beings in that land are purified into emptiness.
다 대탐지 파 다디 나와 마다바탐지 파 장견이 다 애니 단 도나트는 로와 렉트로 나와 대탐지 대와견지 신감는 jorson sambajes.
So all of those impure perceptions, impure experiences are purified and become the outer environment becomes the blissful paradise of Sukhavati, the pure realm of great bliss.
다 난그 주세도 가서 다 직된 되게 나온데 다 빼도 기술 애니 네 대비게다 애니 로와 렉트로 세고로와 애니 제신 로와스는 단 도나 셈젠 담지 도나티 셈젠 담지지 되니 빼도 기술 애니 셈젠 담지 장 대담지 되니 말한조 애니 팍파 지엔즈 다티 말한조고야 다 쪼벌어 곰대바 대낭신 되니 셈젠 담지 장 되니 가서 대낭인게 다 빼도 기술 지엔즈는 jorson sambachi.
And then we imagine that not only the environment transforms, but all the beings within that environment, they become Avalokitesvara, and they appear in the same form as the Avalokitesvara that we were imagining or visualizing at the crown of all of our heads. So my body as well becomes that of Avalokitesvara.
다 양아랑 쪽을 빼는 고라보미야 제도 멘트닝에 다 양절지 쉬어봐이나 나랑 쪽이 되는 아주 강과대양 대화견도 줘 되는 나랑 쪽에 나는 옆에 밑에서다 나랑도 집아 탐지 지내서 줘.
So let me give you another simple way of talking about this. You imagine that, you know, your house, like your space, your house becomes the pure realm of Sukhavati, and all the beings within that house, including yourself, become Avalokitesvara.
오야 다 나랑 쪽을 빼는 기술에 제 중화가 드라케 드라워다 나게 나랑 쪽을 빼다 미소소 밑에서 그 미다 셈제의 수이나 소소게 지 아니 나게 지 드라케당 대나게 지 오그 좋아해 저 탐지 다 지렌즈게 이게 중화 엄마는 빼면 홍 생행게 되는 양나 되니 아니 셔라 소프게 담 또는 지렌즈게 송 되니 이게 중미게 되니 랑자 되니 랑자는 jorson sambajes.
And then we should imagine that, you know, all of the, you know, natural sounds that come from the, you know, environmental world, as well as the sounds of our voices and sounds created by humans, even down to and including the movements of our very breath, all become the naturally emanating sound of Avalokitesvara's mantra, Om Mani Padme Hum and Shri, which is the enlightened speech of Avalokitesvara.
yang aran sukata namju je semje nyomong ba tonga tosom la suka jiknga so semje ta pe jiknga so ta draminda jingaran zoga eni shadya jorwas ta te tamje jang ta phakwa jiren zege tho ta phakwa jiren zege tho pena tane tongni tang hingje chenbo tene ta te na ye pe tene tongni hingje yarme Gona tene te tabu shikdo tene ngaso pa ene tongin hingi kitene ngoworen jorson samaje.
And then as well, like, you know, our minds are normally having all kinds of thoughts of what we refer to as the 5 poisonous emotions or the 3 poisonous thoughts and so forth. All of those things that are normally happening and appearing in our mind, we should think that that our mind becomes the enlightened mind of Avalokitesvara, the enlightened mind, which is the union, the inseparable union of emptiness and great compassion. And that we imagine that our mind has become, you know, inseparable with that mind of Avalokitesvara.
Oh yeah, tam dona tene nangra riksom tamje tene jirenze ke kosong tok tene yishich ene robar jorson samje ne ot tena gi semje yang tena gi gomse.
And so we imagine that all appearing objects, all resounding sounds, and all moments of awareness all become the body, speech, and mind, the primordial wisdom, the timeless awareness of the Buddhas. They become the emanation or the displays of the timeless awareness of the Buddhas. And you meditate on that. And so now I'm going to recite that together again. Through praying single-pointedly in this way, rays of light stream forth from the Noble One's form and purify impure karmic perception and delusion. The outer environment becomes the blissful paradise, Sukhavati. To take on Avalokitesvara's enlightened body, speech, and mind. And beings within it transform physically, vocally, and mentally. To take on Avalokitesvara's enlightened body, speech, and mind. And appearance, sound, and awareness become inseparable from emptiness. Om Mani Padme Hum. 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 Hola, so ta semga te na yin gom teni nga ge yang ta kiren ze la so wa ta teni ta ini yang yin yige trukpa teni ta kale tu si tang bo so wa rang tap teni kale teni yang te se ini redo teni ta kale pe nga ge yang teni manik yige introduct ta war chao se. And so then you should meditate in that way and then focus on that supplication. And then once you focus in on that supplication, then eventually then you should start reciting the Mani mantra. Hola, so ta digitene pedagizere ene ta mani drutupotes ta ene dorna tene ta tela tene chik ene tata and in these 6 syllables of the Mani mantra, it is said that all of the enlightened speech of all the victorious ones, of all the Buddhas, is contained within the 6 syllables. And Padampa Sangye said that, people say, I don't know about the Dharma. I can't practice Dharma. I don't know about Dharma. And he says, what is there to know? There's no one who doesn't know how to recite Om Mani Padme Hum. Yeah. Ta ini te tabu teni tata ngaran zogu penata ini ta zonga yige chok sengindi. Teni ta peti kese ini ngaran ta degi teni chenga to len chik jobi ki penya she gona ya ngaran zogu she matsarbatende yin sone teni mane kambomda pema katangda teni tena yin sanji ki teni peti kese kan doji to sonana pema yores. And in many different texts, such as the Manikabum and the Pema Katang, which is one of the biographies of Guru Rinpoche, and many of the texts of the Buddha, it says that, the benefits of even reciting the 6 syllables of the Mani mantra, even just one single time, if we had to explain how to do that, if we had to explain the benefits of that, we would never finish explaining the great benefits of reciting the Mani mantra, even a single time. Kare oresena lab maguba chik yores lab maguba chuchi kare resena te manres manes chik lab gomar ko pu chingjong ko ta mi gengo gi chik shedo ko denjera khanda tene pu chingjong ge ko so mane pe me on se pet ke se ko pe yenda mi hing o mane pe me on lab hing yores. And so Tibetans, we have a saying that is, there's one dharma that you don't even need to learn, and that is Om Mani Padme Hum. And so, like from a very young age, kids who don't know anything else, they know Om Mani Padme Hum. They run around reciting Om Mani Padme Hum. It's just something that you don't even need to learn. And so, maybe the saying, it's said that the snowy lands of Tibet are really the lands which will be taught or led or trained by Avalokitesvara. And I think maybe it's true.
가리에서는 다 버그 때문에 발솜 탐지라 많은 랑종 너네 다 메사요 말해서 많은 랑종들 빼망고 요랬어.
The reason why I say that is because in all areas of Tibet, in upper, lower, and central Tibet, there are self-arising mani syllables, like in the rocks and so forth, all over the place. There's nowhere that doesn't have self-arising mani mantras.
양 든데스 빼나 드니 초당 든데게 답배도 계서래 아니 잘라 속바 든데 망보라 마네 그 랑라 여데바 고데지 여바들이 망보 여데레스.
And also there are many places, many streams or rocks or large boulders like kind of caves and so forth, where the sound of the mani syllable is naturally occurring, naturally resounding in those places, many places in Tibet.
제장가 되니 다 ngaran 조고 빼나 이니 아니 다 많이 조다를 쓰는 다 법에 룩스라고 제라 아니 리기체 강가라 되니 다 조도가 봐봐 가와이나 다때 매비 버글롱 하람 다다 샤바 따먹는 데솔아야 코츠직 되니 가와이메 답변은 드나 직 도서는 거딱직 나온과지 연하고 뭐라 다르죠지 어렸어 다르죠지 다티 되니 매바 싸니면 도스
and so there's also no place in Tibet that is lacking these mani prayer flags. And so no matter where you go in Tibet, even in the Sherpa areas and Tamang and other areas of Tibetan culture and so forth, there's nowhere where you won't find the mani prayer flags, at the peaks of hills, at the tops of houses and so forth.
And
so, people, there are lots of different kinds of prayer flags and different kinds of flags, but they usually call them by one name, which is the mani flag. And the old people in Tibet, they're always carrying their rosary, their mala with them, and they'll say, "Oh, it's time to go recite some manis," and they'll have their prayer wheel in one hand and their rosary in the other.
And
then the most common name for these things are not just a prayer wheel, but a mani prayer wheel, a mani hand prayer wheel, and a mani mala, mani rosary, not just a rosary. They'll call it the mani rosary. And so there's no place in Tibet where the mani has not spread to. It's everywhere, and it's also something that you don't even need to learn if you were a Tibetan. And so, if someone dies, or if even an insect dies, just immediately what comes out of people's mouth is Om Mani Padme Hum. And even if people are getting together and having a get-together, having a party, and they want to sing a song, they'll sing mani. They'll sing the mani mantra in a melody, And so what does this show? What does this prove? I mean, to me, I think that it proves that the Tibetans are really the disciples, the trainees, you could say, of Avalokitesvara.
많은 동거는 닝게 공고요 바치 에네 쇼크 땡거요레스 에네 많은 동 닝게 고마시나더니 가서 가르세고 요레스나 내쪽고 많은 맞이 아베 내쪽도 속지 기가마 카게 되었지 내쪽고 많은 맞이에서 제마 맞이에서 그래 좀세 가능해서는 닝게 제 되니 빠드쳐서네 다때나기 빼는 동이다 닝게 공고레서 라고 요레스
And so what you should be thinking when you're reciting the Mani mantra is you should be meditating on or thinking about compassion, and that's just something that is understood just naturally with the Mani mantra. And if you recite the Mani mantra and you're not thinking of compassion, what Tibetans say is don't recite the Mani like a parrot. So don't just be repeating the words, like that. Don't just be repeating the words. Yeah.
That's all. Tene songkang tene yang mane kindrop de la tar korsom muto pingana nyambar ya sendoa ta korsom muto ba senatini ta ngarang zo pena ene disom je toba tamje da travinga yang ma tene nyambya je senate yores.
And so here, then it says, finally, this is in the small print, it says, finally, settle evenly in your own essential nature beyond any thought of the three conceptual spheres, subject, object, and activity. You could also think of this as, meditating in the space that is beyond any thoughts of the three times. And so at the end of the practice, settle into that state. And this is another method to make sure that your mani doesn't just become the mani recitation of a parrot, because this one thing that Rinpoche emphasized before that I didn't say as clearly was that when you're reciting the mantra, you shouldn't recite it like a parrot, but you should recite it while, in that awareness of compassion and emptiness. So then here, this meditation on emptiness is another method to make sure that your mani doesn't just become the parrot's mani.
yang ngaran zogo any pesma nyamyaje teni yang lara yang teni ta ngaran zogo nyamya tone ya je top the drop bas kali resena da yen luna pakpiko dada yege tongmi yang tento xie chimbe long sing interest.
And so then we should rest in that meditative equipoise for a little while, but then we have to get up at some point, right? We have to move about in our what we would call a post-attainment or our day-to-day lives, our our ordinary activities. And so when we're going to do that, then we recite these lines here that say, I and others appear as the noble one's enlightened form. All sounds take on the melody of the 6-syllable mantra, and all thoughts are the expanse of great primordial wisdom.
Voilà, c'est une diète au grand ya kaze je tout que tene pede ene le de flagon. Tene ngage yige tumadang. Ene ta samsang yang je ba je tene tendo tamje tene ta tongni dang tene ta nga zu pede je seri ningje chembo ngala tene kang to je gore se yores.
And so what this is saying is that when you're out of your main primary meditative session, your practice session, you're in your day-to-day life, that as best you can, you should try to continue to visualize yourself in the form of the deity, in the form of Avalokitesvara. You should try to make your speech be, resounding the sounds of the 6-syllable mantra. And sometimes you should sing them in a melody. And that your thoughts, you should, as best you can, try to keep your thoughts in that state of emptiness and compassion.
Da ini da Thangtong papa lo chungjon de zoge chutsu hera mishiba chardo yor kitang hera kira hegmindosa.
And these days, the young people, the young Tibetans, don't really know much about Dharma. They're not really learning much about Dharma. But even though they don't know Dharma and they don't seem too interested, when they get into any kind of difficulty, they automatically say Om Mani Padme Hum.
거저 방어 그렇지야 된 나는 저게 동행이 된 부모지 어려서 봐봐 부모지 근데 코마 트이소레스 근데 가자 맨달라 랩니 근데 거저 마트는 로그로 사용 비압도가 근데 사용 비압도 다 부모다 딱 뿌니 습존 엄마네 빼면
I have a story for you. So there's a time when there were a lot of earthquakes happening in Nepal, and there was this woman, mother, and she had a couple kids, and she ended up getting a chance to move to Switzerland, but her kids got stuck in Nepal, and so we needed to take the kids. The kids needed to get over to the embassy to get an introduction, so they could kind of see about trying to get them to get over to Switzerland. So we have one secretary for the monastery who's a young Tibetan woman, and so she took the kids to Kathmandu, to the embassy. And as they were in the taxi, like going to the embassy, there was an earthquake happening, and she grabbed the kids and was Mani Pepe Ho, Mani Pepe Ho.
알았어. 다 되니 또 다 많이들 강다더니 다 이니 대체하러 왔으더니 제탑 돌아야 또 그랬더니 다 타마게 개와도서도 했더니 막 뭐하면 그 지생고 그래세.
So anyway, like in your kind of day-to-day life, you should try as best you can to recite more Mani mantras and so forth. And then at the end of the practice, you need to make sure that your practice is sealed with the dedications and aspirations. So recite this at the bottom here.
So
the dedication is, through the positivity and merit of this, may I swiftly attain the realization of Avalokitesvara, and thereby every single sentient being reach his state of perfection too.
So
what's being said here is that by the power of our dedication of merit, by the power of our giving our merits, we dedicate all of our merits to all beings. May they be freed from all of their fearful situations, all of their sufferings and so forth, and ultimately may they attain the state of Avalokitesvara. So now this concludes my meditation and instructions, like the joint meditation instructions and transmission of this practice, which is called the visualization and recitation of the great compassionate one, the far-reaching benefit of all, extensive as the sky, which is the blessed speech of the great adept Thangtong Gyalpo. Oh, and I was thinking that one other thing that I wanted to tell you is that reciting the Mani mantra even will help to overcome your immediate, temporary obstacles and illnesses and difficulties.
Oh, that thing, then Mamata, Polaya, Tangtong Jabu Capsule, Saja, that Saja singing some Saja Longba Telatini, Sandra Wogatani, Ned Dupachi, Tan, Mima, Komitsama Hiro Yores.
So back in the past, when Thangtong Gyalpo was around, there's a place in Tibet that's called Sakya. And in that place, there was a really terrible illness going around and everyone was dying.
Oh, then Thangtong Gyalpo, then she the cause Thangtong Gyalpo, then Khandro Yakorma, that Khandro, your what is Khandro Yakorman, the man and dance, Khandro Yakorma, then man and dance.
And so when they asked Thangtong Gyalpo what they should do, he told them that they should, they should recite the refuge prayer and they should recite Mani mantras.
Then come out and Monam Kim Zayores, then Monam Kikta, Tachi Li Dang Tachi and Jolbik, then Tachi any Don the Neda Ramla Supatam Kishia, Monam Kim Zen.
And then he also composed a particular aspiration prayer for them, which says, like all of these disturbances of illness and problems and difficulties and so forth that are coming because of our karma and our afflictive emotions and so forth, may they be pacified by this and that and so forth. So there's an aspiration prayer as well. And so then Thangtong Gyalpo told them all to recite that prayer.
Tene tege jesu tene ne tamche kozo pe rangjin ge che sores tene monam te tata yore tene dela Thangtong Gyalpo ge saja ne dormas derte dela kozo menyang tata monam khoro menya tegara ores tukya Thangtong Gyalpo ze yapi saji ne dormas.
And so then later, after he, told them to recite that, then that illness just naturally ceased. It stopped affecting anyone. And so that prayer still exists to this day, and it's called the prayer which liberated the illness of the Sakyas, composed by the Mahasiddha Thangtong Gyalpo.
Voilà, so tenite na yinge ta chirenze ki tata pe tata ngaran karasa chirenze ki goni ten mane ki goni ten tata pe na nganjur nyingme ke nala ta chik ni guru Rinpoche ki zebe ta chirenze ki goni ten mane ro tola teni shawa jeba wang trapo tene tela sokwa tine na sokwa ke ene tene chea ke o pene padu meba yore tene sonza yang tene ta mane teke ene yang je shetsadu mado yang mahe ya tene mare tene mane teke ni kapta tarso ko tene te tamche la pengre yang tingi che namana yang je shu taringa mange tipo la shira shumidoa tene sonza te mixe ke tene yang shea yin sa tene te tama yin.
And so my last thing that I want to mention again is that one thing that I didn't mention earlier is that also there are practices of Avalokitesvara working with the Mani Mantra, some in our Nyingma tradition composed by Guru Rinpoche, which use the Mani Mantra in order to enact all kinds of activities, all kinds of enlightened activities of pacifying, enriching, magnetizing, and the forceful or wrathful activities. That all of those, there are all kinds of various activities that can be enacted through these kind of Avalokitesvara practices. And so the Mani Mantra is not only for attaining temporary goals, it's not also not only for attaining the ultimate goals of enlightenment, but can, function and it's efficacious for both. And so now to conclude, I'm going to chant Mani in a melody.
Ta mane tene karesa gora yang de na tene on mane peme hong singen da tene on mane peme hong shi singen ji yores.
And so sometimes, when people are chanting the Om Mani Padme Hum, sometimes they'll just say Om Mani Padme Hum, and sometimes they'll say Om Mani Padme Hum Shri. And we have melodies for both. And so the just Om Mani Padme Hum, just the main 6 syllables, is the sutra tradition.
Ne mane pe me hong she singen de tene zo tene nga gare ta ti zo jiren ze tog sok de tene ta ngoma sung zen gambo da tene kapso tene tangon dolok de mane ru kwa de sung gare ti jeso tene song de se mention de tene zo ta ene tuge chembo ga ta song durzan rabote tene mixer ge ta song tene special to so yor tene tedang nyamdo tene manen drup duma senge tene tigi jeso tene ya manen drup chuba senge tene ki thola tene yore tene yang tingsan ra minda tene lamngen do khashi ge tene shen do lo yo mare senge ra tene lamngen do wa o teso khale nyenje yo mare ta ningmi so tene so tar ten se do ta tu ningmi tingsan kapso mane peme hong shi senge de khachen bo shira res.
And so then that Shri is really like the heart, the seed syllable, or the heart syllable of the enlightened speech of Avalokitesvara. And so at the time of Songtsen Gampo, one of the early kings of Tibet, they mainly focused on and recited only the 6 syllables, the sutra tradition. But then from Trisong Detsen onwards into the future in Tibetan history, as they were focusing on translating all of these texts from Sanskrit into Tibetan, and they were, really focusing in on this enlightened speech aspect, then they added in this 7th syllable, the Shri, which is the heart essence, the heart syllable, the seed syllable of Avalokitesvara, onto the end. And so that became what they call the 7-syllable Mani mantra. There are even a 10-syllable mantra of the Mani. But anyway, there are some people who say, oh, that's a mistake, and you shouldn't be reciting the Shri at the end. There's no 7th syllable in the Mani mantra, but you really shouldn't listen to them. Is actually adding in the seed syllable, which is the heart syllable of Avalokitesvara, is something that we consider very important in the Nyingma tradition. So, yeah. La Kimbola.
In the time of degenerate.
Oh, in this degenerate time, we consider it important to add on that Shri syllable.
Oh yeah, teniti tatandi ma panun zepiteninde. Oh, yana di bandeso kembo ma longden don yana songdo yang yige nyam jordo de sangmin don tomne yago yosres.
Oh, so Kempo said that he thought it would be good if I just went ahead and gave you guys the reading transmission, the Lung, for the additional verses that are added here, just because it's in the text, so you might as well have the transmission for it. So.
Dati ene yang karsan ene gelong pema karpe tudam kirenzake soldav singende pache ene Thangtong ge truba tene pache top zonduk songba insayo samgodo yam te tene ti wote sowa so lama kirenze singende yang teama ene longda yagyens.
So this next part, you guys probably don't know where we are anyway because Rinpoche recited so fast, but the second part from the To You I Pray Guru Avalokitesvara, I believe, is the words of the great master Tsundru, who was an emanation of Thangtong Gyalpo. And so now I'm going to read that section.
Sanje to par kin jalo to de Ling sa gwen de she dang wang ge nya ba ji jo na ta ra dong ra nyu su je na ji jo ro jo yo ma ne pe me ho to de Ling sa ge de se ma ge ta ne jo be de gom dong ai xin jo bo da la ra jo yo ma ne pe me ho to me ne Ling de ta mo wang ge tin de ji jo na Ling bo dong ri se je na bo ji jo to de jo yo ma ne pe me ho to de ne Ling a bo de ja wang ge je je zhen bo dong ra nyu se je na xin jo de wa ji yo ma ne pe mo to me de Ling sa gwen do dong 탑저 동가 탑저 동은 님 좀 전화 중요한 보다 라에 현도 저기 오만에 빼면 또 되네 랭에서부터 맞으러 간 거야. 라에 좀 가 동은 무슨 전화 이게 보다 오만에 빼면 다 지금 이제 와도 되네 되는데 와도 마다 생각을 원이가 동교 얘기를 지금 동교 이로 특기로 집을 겸하고 바고 지나던 너 성가 그다게 들으라 저빈도 와는 알람제 림제 로레 게벨 노베 단도 주당 덴발 쇼 스타팀 차스타 티게양 타다나 양만음 찍도 디지털 기네 테라버레스.
And there's also one more additional aspiration prayer that's at the very end of the text, which is also an addition.
And so
now I'm going to chant the Mani mantra in a melody.
Pema Omani Pema Omani Lasso to yeta terenge teni chiren zaketa tata tata drup tupken Thangtong jebin zebate tata nga zuma gomong go chod shyoba yin ta dege ngarang ne ta tupsa te tingo chenze rumbochi ge tene tenim de yang char mangbo tumbeji tene topsong tene dege ta chena balaya rumbochi ge tene che chayi yuzong che chene tene ma gomong go chod chene tene phyoba yin 다 데르모지게다 미세기 로게 모담 테네 데나게 마망 좀사 창마라 딱버 테네 고조 제네데게 공능데 송고요레 테네 제란 조가다 창메게 테네 마난다 제네젤라 소와토 모아모람게 테네 창마테데 제쇼 테네 투제제 타히델라이스.
So that concludes my teaching on meditation transmission of this practice of Avalokitesvara composed by Tong Gyalpo, which I received my own transmission from Gyalpo Rinpoche. I received this from him many times, and I was able to offer this to you with his specific kind of particular tradition of how he would give that transmission with this meditation transmission. And so Khyentse Rinpoche would often give this teaching and encourage this teaching for lay practitioners and older folks and so forth. And so anyway, you guys should practice this, and you should make these supplications to Avalokitesvara, do the meditation, make dedications and aspirations.
Lasso. Good night.
Thank you so much, Rinpoche and Justina.
Thank you so much, Rinpoche.
기회에 알레요 다동 직슈그래 디기 때문에 양 디 다다게 디 용수 조건데 요데 뭐마야 야바 까마바니 직 거도 세아들라 네게 트가 제게 제바지 니마 직스기를 거도 낭송아 대양하게 되니 냠라 톱송사.
One other thing I want to mention is that also one time when His Holiness Karmapa came to Seattle, he gave a very extensive explanation of this practice over the course of one day, and I was also able to receive it from him. And someone in the chat asked about the prayer for pacifying sickness in the land of Sakyas. I don't know if that's translated into English or not. I have the Tibetan prayer, but I don't.
You can find it at Lotsawa House. Just Google it.
Okay, yeah, it's in Lotsawa House then, yeah. If you look in Lotsawa House and then search for Thangtong Gyalpo in the authors section, you'll find it. Okay, good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night, Rinpoche. Thank you so much, Rinpoche, and on everyone.
Good night,
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rinpoche. Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
See you again, Rinpoche and Kenbola.
Thank you. 현재 뭐 당동 자본이 대시 더워도 현재 뭐 당동 자본이 대시 더워 민도에스.
It looks like Khyentse Rinpoche and Thangtong Gyalpo look similar, right?
당동 자본보다 야 담도아 대시 갈보도 현재 rinpoche 야 담요 말에 연다디 찍과도 도와스.
Yeah, Thangtong Gyalpo's hair is tied. He has a top knot tied up at the top, but Khyentse Rinpoche is just like released freely down.
Then chair mother chikarashas.
Yeah, both are connected.
Thangtong Gyalpo gomta jinnaviendo. Thangtong Gyalpo carpet mangpo doas.
Yeah, Thangtong Gyalpo has the most beard, more beard
Oh,
comparing to Khandro.
oh. Chapter Rinpoche doas.
Similar to Jadu Rinpoche. Yeah.